All right, let's start. Look, welcome everybody to the Tropical Australian Academic Health Centre webinar series. So this one is one that's really quite exciting for me today because it's an area that I do not know much about at all. So I'm going to be learning along with many of you as well. And it's called Conducting Clinical Trials in Northern Queensland. So unusually for us today, we've got 4 speakers who are going to give you a whistle-stop tour around the clinical trials site, what they are, what does it mean, how do you engage people, how do you conduct one, how on earth do you start with that, and then the wraparound support that's available to you. So they're going to do all those talks between 10 and 15 minutes each, and then at the end we're going to have a panel discussion, which is the usual format for a TARC webinar. So let's start. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians on the land in which we all meet today. For us here sitting in Townsville, it's the Woolgoolakaba and Bindals people. I pay my respect to their rich cultures and their knowledge, and I also pay my respects to their elders past and present. Now, just a little bit about TARC for those of you who may not know us. Many of you do, but this is a standard webinar slide, so that's what it is. We are a collaboration in Northern Queensland of the 5 HHSs, Cairns and Hinterland, Mackay, Northwest, Torres Strait and Townsville. Also, we incorporate the NQPHN, James Cook University and the Queensland Aboriginal and Islander Health Council. We have research streams that we all work together to explore, and their service delivery to regional, rural, remote and Indigenous populations, innovative health workforce models, non-communicable diseases with high prevalence in our region, and infectious diseases. Really, one of the most important things that you need to take away from this slide is that website down the bottom in green. That website is for you to visit. It has lots of research resources on it. If you need statistical support, if you want some help developing research questions, that is the place where you'll find a lot of resources and a lot of information to help you do so. So if you're interested in running your own research kind of pilot, your own trial or anything like that, reach out to us by following that website. So some webinar housekeeping before we get going. If you could, everybody's doing it now, just mute your mic until after the panel discussion. What we're going to do is have questions and answers are going to be scheduled at the end of all the talks. So we're going to do the 4 talks first, and then we're going to have questions and answers with the panel after that. So if you have a burning question, either write it down yourself or pop it in the chat. It's great, I think, at the panel discussion, if you have the ability to put on your cameras. It would really be great to see you. It's much nicer to be able to speak to people who you can see. But if you can't, that's understandable. We'll do that. You can either put your hand up to ask a question, or you can pop it in the chat and we can address it that way. But let's start our discussions. Our panel conversation today. So as I said, there's going to be 4 talks talking about clinical trials today. So we have Tiki Baker-Pearson. Wave, Tiki. Yeah, there you are. Excellent. She's going to talk about what are clinical trials. Natasha Zara, waiting. He's going to talk about reaching out to communities. Jackie Bulbrook, over there. Yeah. He's going to talk about conducting and running and how do you set one up and how do you actually do that and what are the nuts and bolts of that. And Kim Burry over here is going to talk to you about the supports that are available to you. I'm going to drive the slides. We thought that would be easier, but that means that everybody has to just say next slide, Ray, or give me an oi for me to move it on. So I'll move on the first one, Tiki. I probably can actually manage to do that all by myself.
Oh, I'm so pleased.
I know, I've skilled. All right, over to you, Paul. I will now just be the slide mover.
Okay, hello everyone. How are you all going? I know everyone's on mute, so I'm not expecting you to answer. Wish my children could be put on mute. That would be lovely. All right, so I'm talking about clinical trials. Now, please bear with me for those of you who know what a clinical trial is or work in clinical trials. I don't want to be rehashing what you already know. So if you do wish to be asleep during this part and you know what these things are, then go for it. So we've got 2 types of trials. There's the interventional and the observational. With the interventional, there's usually two different treatment groups. So one group will receive one lot of treatment and the other group will receive either no treatment or a different sort of treatment. Then, of course, you've got your observational studies, which always confused me because a trial is a study is a trial. So this is where the whole language thing comes into it. So the observational studies, they have different situations and there's no influence on it, okay? They don't have the intervention on it. With different types of trials, you've got all of those things that are listed there, and they are all slightly different. And I've just realised I forgot a bracket after MAMS, so I apologise about that. So we've got your pilot studies, feasibility studies. They're the small versions of studies, and sometimes they're done before a large trial takes place. A lot of the time we don't tend to see the smaller studies, the pilot studies. They're often done beforehand in this. Well, I haven't come across any pilot studies. If anyone else has, let me know. The feasibility study, they're actually designed to see if it's possible to do the main study. So these are like the pre-studies of the studies of the studies. The prevention trials, these are the small versions of the main study. So once again, these are like little steps that we're doing things for it. And it helps to test that if the main parts of the studies are going to work together. The prevention trials, this is where we tend to see more of it, looks at whether a particular treatment can help prevent, say, cancer, or the people taking part don't have cancer. These are very, very long trials, and they are used for a general population of the people who have a higher than normal risk of developing a certain cancer. So you're looking at BRCA1. Everyone knows what the BRCA1 gene is, the BRCA1 breast cancer gene. So they're the sort of trials that they're looking at. The screening trials are for the people with the early stages of cancer. And so with the prevention trials, they can be in the general population or they can be a group of people who are high in the normal. You got the treatment trials, and this is where the phases of our studies come into it. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, those sorts of phases. Where am I? The later phases aim to see if the new treatment works better than the current treatment. And I've only ever really been on the phase 3 trials, which is where we're looking at that. And that's probably where most of us who have been in research that I've met are on the phase 3 trials. Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody? No one say anything? Good. Okay, so they can also look with the treatment trials if the treatment works better than a placebo. And we've got a couple of those trials happening at the moment and some that are coming up. The MAMS trial, or the multi-stage, this is a multi-arm trial. It has several treatment groups as well. And then there's the standard treatment group or the control group. They have the same group of people all the way through, not subjects. Apparently we don't like to call them subjects. It's not a nice thing to be termed as a subject. So the same group of control group all the way through, but the other treatment groups can change as the trial goes on. They're a lot more complex, and I haven't been party to one of these trials yet, and I'm rather glad that I haven't been, to be honest, with the way I've looked at what they have to do. The research team has to decide whether or not to stop recruiting the people to the particular groups, and it can be because they don't have enough people to start looking at the trials or looking at the results, or because the early results show that the treatment isn't working well as they hoped. So it's quite a complex one, the MAMS trial. The observational studies are cohort studies that use case control studies or cross-sectional studies, and they're all observational studies. And it looks at the group of people that follows them over a period of time. Most of the studies clinical trials will take a long time. Okay, we're looking at 5 years, 2 years, that sort of thing. And then it takes another little while to get all the results. What am I up to? Cross-sectional studies or cross-controlled studies. They work in the opposite way to the cohort. The research team recruits a group of people who have the disease and a group of people who don't. So this is where it goes the other way. And then they look back to see how many people in each group were exposed to a certain risk factor. Smoking, vaping could be probably the new one. I don't know if anyone else is noticing who work in the health industry. I guess we're an industry. The amount of patients that we see now with the vaping has increased dramatically, and they're getting younger. So that would be an example if you were looking at a study with people who vape and people who don't vape. And can I have the next slide, please, Mike? Please, Ray. Okay, so how do we find out about these trials? Well, there are databases. Everyone loves a database. Benchmarking is probably the biggest way that I find out about trials, talking to other hospitals, talking to other clinical research nurses, getting to know your cohort, getting to know your teams. Know your area that you live in and the specialities that your hospital or institution actually look after. There is no point in looking at a trial for cardiothoracics if your hospital doesn't look after cardiothoracic patients or do the surgery that the trial is looking at. Okay, know your population dynamics too, because this can actually influence how successful a trial is going to be. The population dynamics looks at your age of your population that present to the hospital or institution, the sex, whether or not you've got a high income, low income, that sort of thing. Know the population dynamics, because that can actually help you choose what trials would actually work for that area, and not just work to get recruitment, but actually help your population. Because if you know your population, then you're going to know what they need. And that's probably the biggest thing. And having trials thrown at you saying, oh, this is a trial, it's a great, well-paying trial, we'll do this trial. There's no point in having a trial that is very well-paying and you're going to get 2 people a year enrolled into it because your population doesn't have it. Your capabilities. Probably staff would probably be my big thing with capabilities. Do you have enough staff to deal with the trials? There's a lot of stuff that goes along with trials, and you will be seeing what we have to do after that. Your capabilities, do you have the office staff, office space? Do you have the availability of theatres, of wards, of consumables, that sort of thing? You've got to look at it all. It's not just this trial looks fabulous, they pay us a lot of money, let's do it. You've got to see that you've got the staff, the equipment, and the ability to do this trial. And the staff have got to have the knowledge of the trial, knowledge of what the area that the trial is trying to cover, or that sort of thing. Am I making sense, guys? It's been a very busy morning. Where to go? That's probably the biggest thing for me. When I first started in research, I had no idea what I was doing. And you're dumped and you're told, these are your 5 trials, off you go. You know, enroll people. You've got to know where to ask, and you've got to be able to ask the trial, ask people to help you with it. And feasibility, as I said before, know your area of speciality. Is this trial going to be feasible for your department? There's no point in doing a trial that won't help your population or that you can't do. So you've got to fit the population, be equitable. Trials, let's face it, you've got to be able, if you can do a trial that is a pro bono trial and you've got the staff to do it, then great, do it. But you've got to be able to also fund trials. You've got to be able to pay staff. And you've got to have a result for the population that you're doing with. There's no point in doing a trial that is going to take a lot of time and you're not going to get any result for it. The result can be bad, because some trials do have bad results, but you've got to have a result. So you've got to take the time. I do like this little cartoon here because you do feel like you work in a little box sometimes, and acronyms with trials are probably the biggest thing that I found the most difficult to come to terms with. So I felt like shutting myself in a box once or twice and using that sort of thing. So that's basically a very brief overview of what a clinical trial is. And in 10 minutes, you really can't do it. But I hope I haven't confused you. And now, is it all right if I give Matassa's? Okay, here you go, Tass.
Afternoon, how you going? My name's Matassa, one of the clinical research coordinators here at Townsville University Hospital. Proud Aboriginal, Torres Strait and CLC Islander man. Got roots back to Ngawagi, Mumbra from my Aboriginal side, and Murray Island from my Torres Strait Islander side, and Tanner Island from CLC Islander. So I've been in here about a year, or coming up to a year, in working on the no touch trial. Soon to be working on the consent study, which is my component where I'll be accessing or recruiting for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, going through exploring the consent process. But today we're just going to talk about consumer engagement, like knowing our community, knowing patients that are coming from outside Townsville that we are seeing that are coming in for surgeries. So talking about consumer engagement, we don't have a process for it, but we've got a something that works for Tiki and I. Like we're aware of there are patients coming in. We know this family stresses, the distance, financial stresses, and I think we got to be prepared for that, and it's everyone across the board. We've got that. So being prepared for them, once they're here, we're approaching them to participate in a trial or a study. Allow yourselves to be, approachable, even if they aren't, wanting to participate. I think it's great, if we can flag it with them. Obviously, they have other family members coming in, or they know other people coming in, and then look, oh, they're running in, this trial here at the hospital. So also being accessible. So once we gain, we give them enough, time to gain that informed consent. Talk with their families. Allow them enough time, and being honest with them. Once we've got them signed up to the trial, we tend to follow through. Be engaged throughout their stay or their journey here at the hospital, and it's just basic stuff. We'll be on their level. I think we get too much tunnel vision, and we're just zoned in of what we're going to do. But I think taking that time, having a yarn with them and being grateful, that they even want to be a part of the trial or the study. They're doing us a favor, and I think it's valuable. Their feedback, their data that we're collecting is important, especially with our catchment being high with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And for me to be in a role that I am and be the same background as, I think it's a plus. We'll be able to gain with not only myself, but it gives me opportunity to get other Indigenous people to come in and work with us, and just think we can be capturing and engaging with our mob. And I think working with having the backgrounds of the people in the positions, if they're interested, it would be such a grab of getting that information of people that are coming in, and just basically being human to our every patient across the board. They're coming in for something serious, and then this the last thing they want, a trial or being part of something when they've got 1,000 other things to worry about. 5 doctors coming in and seeing them, nurses. I tend to leave the research out of it at the start, but when I come in, I'm just building that rapport. If you build that rapport at the start, you're gonna have them, throughout the trial or the study without any withdrawals or anything like that. And we've found ourselves to be quite successful at the moment. So I think it's just back to basics. We forget, we're human, they're human. Let's just get through it in a good way. Following all their guidelines, best practice. Let's just yeah, you know, community as well. It's very important. We, especially if there's studies with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, we want to make sure that we have the traditional owners, you know, let them know that we're conducting this research here on their land, and also some of the councils as well. Like Council's pretty good here, you know, with endorsing, you know, once we've got that backing, you know, trials, you know, it will help with RGO and the ethics for everything else to go through. So like, again, I'm still new to this space, but I think there's plenty more things to get done here and learn, I guess, on my journey. Next slide, please.
Oh, am I doing this? Oh, okay. Hello, me again. Oh, just when you thought it was safe, I'm back. Okay, we're actually wanting to start a group of like-minded clinical research coordinators, and we'd also like people who aren't research coordinators to come and join us. We want to go and look at case studies, journal clubs, which I know a lot of people go journal clubs, but actually some journals can be very, very interesting, and it's also something that you learn from, because journals come from trials, a lot of them. So this is where we sort of combine the two, and lots of other interesting things. So Matassa and I are wanting to just get a group together. If you want to join us, please feel free. Send us an email, and yeah, come on down. Thank you. Put us on mute.
All right. Thank you very, very much. Jackie, over to you to discuss the nuts and bolts.
Hello, I think I've got my sound on. So I'm Jackie Bulbrook. I'm a diabetes and endocrine research coordinator. I came to this position not by choice or by design, and I've always had that sneaking suspicion that I'm actually impersonating a grown-up, or at the very least somebody who knows a lot more than I do. My story quickly, just for what it's worth. After many years as a clinical nurse in a regional hospital, working in ICU, CCU, I came to Townsville to live and work, and I decided that I was never going to work night shift again. So I jumped ship from my old work life to become a diabetes educator. And I found that part of the package was to coordinate a diabetes foot study that was already in progress. I was told to apply for the position, and I did, explaining honestly that I had no experience in research, but that I'm a quick learner and I'd give it my best shot. The PI who took me on, I believe, didn't have a lot of options at the time, and he's probably the kindest and most patient person I've ever encountered. The previous coordinator had left for health reasons, and no one had been in the position for 12 months. The project was rudderless, and I feel fairly certain that this is all a bit of a familiar story. Tiki, I'm sure it would resonate with you. I know when you mentioned that, I thought, oh, yep, it seems to be universal. Picking up a study in the middle, as I said, I was a fast learner, but I would have drowned if it was not for all the amazing giving people who are out there in research, who really do know what they're doing. I felt very alone at first, and I'd be lying if I said that initially I decided that it was going to be a very temporary position. And here I am almost 7 years later. I discovered several facts. These are 3 of them. The PI that you work with wants you to succeed at all costs. If you work in an industry-sponsored study, the sponsor will help to show you the rules. They have lots of guidance for exactly what you need to do, and they have as much at stake in your succeeding. The research community is a giving and really helpful one, and there is help and support out there if you look and if you reach out. Second thing I learned is that it's incredibly interesting and fulfilling work. It's full of challenges, and it really will grow your skills and your mind. The third one is that you'll be working with others on projects that have a truly positive impact on people's lives now and into the future. So what does a coordinator actually do? You work closely with a PI, a principal investigator, to make a clinical trial happen. And a bit like Tiki, I thought I would mention that I really hate acronyms. I try not to use them because half the time when I do, they're the wrong ones. So you're fairly safe with me. I'll make sure that I mention what anything I do drop is. So that's my second slide. So coordinating, I feel, is a lot like preparing a meal. I'm a mum and a granny, and so I've cooked a few of those. as I'm sure the rest of you have. So like preparing a meal, we need to break it down. When you start, it's like buying and assembling the ingredients, working out the timing of events. Then when you're conducting the study, you're ensuring that it's conducted as per the protocol and the guidance of GCP, or good clinical practice. It's actually much like cooking the food and serving it up. Closing the study is like clearing the table and doing the dishes. The wonderful part is that you're involved in it all. How smoothly it goes is in your hands, so no pressure. So let's get right down to it, preparing for the study to happen. So we need to organise HREC and RGO, so this is ethics and governance. And if you're like me, when I started, I really didn't know what these groups do. Simplistically, I look at ethics as being responsible for the impact on the patients and their families, and ensuring that the study is practical, that it's fair, and that ensuring the patient's right and safety are looked after. Governance is about how the study fits into the goals, finance, legal requirements, business of the organisation where it'll be conducted. You'll be involved in preparing the submissions, gathering documents for the study so that it can be approved. You'll be liaising with the sponsor, doing site feasibility, selection of the site induction visits, keeping everybody up to date with progress of the study preparation, providing documentation that's required for these. You work with the PI to gather a team and make sure that everybody is familiar with what the protocol requires, helping him or her decide realistically how many subjects your team could recruit. You're preparing equipment and services, ensuring that we have the access to the right equipment, that it's fit for purpose and it has the necessary documentation to prove that it's fit for purpose. You identify and ensure that other services that are required have the capacity and the interest, of course, to provide what the study requires. Preparing a multidisciplinary team to implement the study. You may have to find new staff, you'll have to coordinate training, you'll be encouraging, nagging where necessary, motivating and keeping everybody informed. We need to coordinate the finances of the study, helping the team to ensure that the CTRA, or the Clinical Trial Research Agreement, is adequate, and negotiating with the sponsor when it's not. Working out how you can start up before the budget arrives and convince the finance department that it will pay for itself in the end. Coordinating how all of the requirements of the study will be delivered. Coordinating advertising of the study so that everybody knows what's going to happen, who can be in the study. In short, you're making sure that the idea can become a reality. It can be an exhilarating ride when the timeframes are short and the stakes are high. So next we come to conducting the study. So you're going to ensure that the site has both the permission in writing from hospital governance and from the sponsor to commence. You're going to start recruiting the patients, pre-screening, screening, consenting patients, reaching out to the hospital community and the wider health community to ensure that projected targets for recruiting are met to your best ability. You've made, a statement that you can try to recruit as many people, and you need to try and do that. You need to implement the protocol, make appointments, schedule study activities, ensure that the patient has a quality experience as part of the study. With the PI, you manage AEs, or adverse events, serious adverse events, protocol deviations. Yes, despite your best efforts, they may occur, and you need to report everything within the agreed timeframes. You're maintaining the CRF, the case report form, or more usually now the electronic case report form. You need to look after the study binders. With the PI, you're submitting annual reports. The study and its data is only good as its documentation, and this is a really, really important part of your work. Reporting to the RGO anything that has changed, numbers of patients, serious adverse events, notifications from the sponsor, any amendments or changes to the protocol. You need to maintain equipment and study supplies. You need to do annual maintenance and calibration, certification of these checks, anticipating the need for supplies during public holidays or downtimes, placing orders, receiving and accounting for stock, obtaining and maintaining consumables that need to be sourced locally. I mean, it says complex is making sure that you know when the public holidays are on in Singapore or America or wherever you're receiving your supplies from. You need to keep the other study nurses and coordinators motivated and aware of progress. You need to ensure that there aren't any barriers to them to implementing the study protocol. You have to cover for leave, plan for holiday periods, address any concerns with confidence, and identify any training gaps, providing cover for personal emergencies. You're really doing the lot. You need to keep the PI abreast of everything that is happening in the study and the patient, and also the patients involved. They're keen, you know, I've found personally, they realise they're contributing to a new body of knowledge, and most people are really keen to hear about what's happening. You need to ensure that the whole team are aware of progress of the study, any changes to the protocol, ongoing training, sharing advice from the sponsor, any study events and any opportunities that are coming up. You need to liaise with the study monitor and provide access to records and study documents as has been agreed. You need to respond to their request in a timely fashion. Their job is to help you do your job correctly. You need to be open and objective to suggestions and criticism. It's hard work collecting this data and we really need to make it count. At the end of the study, we want to make sure it's detailed, that it's comprehensive, and that it's absolutely spot on. So closing the study. We've done all the hard work and now it's time to finish off. You need to keep the PI and the study team, the RGO, aware of any advice from the sponsor that the study may finish, and ensuring that they have the information they need to wind down their part of study activities. Because as we said, sometimes studies finish early, sometimes studies finish depending on when a certain level of information is reached. So of course, everybody may not be aware that the study is going to finish. So obviously it's documentation, documentation, and more documentation. We need to ensure that the patients are aware of what's expected of them. And that everything is done to show them respect for the contribution that they've made. And I think a very big part is planning for their care and support and any referral to services that may be required for when the study finishes. They've been part of the study family, you know, maybe from 3 to 5 years, and it's been a big part of their life. So we need to make sure that if medication that they've been on finishes, or even just the fact that they're coming to visit us, that we've often been able to help them with different things, that they don't feel that they've just been left. We need to schedule and implement final protocol activities. So we're going to work closely with the monitor to finalise study documentation. We need to start thinking about arranging storage of study documents in line with legislative, HREC and the sponsor's requirements. All studies aren't, the documentation isn't stored for the exact amount of time. Some will require longer times than others, and we need to be prepared for that. We need to ensure that all the invoicing is completed within the times agreed to by the CTRA, because some things are limited to, you know, like a certain amount of weeks, and we want to make sure that our facility has been reimbursed for everything that they need to be. We need to, sometimes there's disposal of things like lab kits, etc. And we need to perhaps return any study equipment that might have been borrowed. The other thing, of course, is that we're keeping our eyes out for which project is going to be next, because why waste a great team that you've assembled to do this study? And of course, a word of warning is that in all odds, you'll probably be starting your next study in the middle of finishing this one. So it's going to be a hectic time. So I don't think I've forgotten anything, but that's probably not true, because there is always something else. I believe that you'll see now that depending on how you see yourself, being a coordinator is either like being a chef, a wedding planner, an event planner for something akin to a rock concert, or maybe it's just like being a busy mum or dad, whichever floats your boat. To me, it means that you're basically the one who's at the heart of the whole event. You get in there and you make the event possible, you keep the team together, you're part of the event happening, and when it's over, you see out the guests, you pick up the spent decorations, you sweep the floor, and you turn out the lights. You're the very last one to leave. Thank you.
Sorry, you can never quite find the cursor moving it from there to there. Thank you very much, Jackie. These are really interesting. What I'm hearing very loud and clearly, and what I want to emphasize just between our transition between another speaker, is that level of respect for the participant. Right, you know, I've heard it a couple of times now about how that's really front and center to your roles. But I also think that the image of the person who has a lot of arms sounds like it's true. You guys do an amazing job. So over to you, Kim, to talk about your work.
Thanks, Ray. So I'm Kim. As Ray said, I'm part of the Queensland Regional Clinical Trials Coordinating Centre, or QRCCC. So I guess we've heard what clinical trials are. So I'm here just to tell you a little bit about our team and how we can support or maybe assist you. So the QRCCC's vision is improving access to and participation in clinical trials for our rural, regional and remote Australians. And we are planning to do this by expanding the reach of clinical trials in Queensland, develop clinical trials workforce capability and capacity, build a more interconnected clinical trials system, and close the gap in health outcomes for all Queenslanders. And we are aiming to achieve this by assisting and supporting all Queensland hospital and health services to implement the Australian teletrial program. Next slide, please, Ray. So what is the Australian Teletrial Program, or ATP? It is a health systems research project to make clinical trials and models of care accessible to our rural, regional and remote RRR communities. Currently, 88% of clinical trials are run from city metro areas, meaning our RRR patients cannot access new treatments unless they travel or move. Teletrials is a proven model connecting a regional, rural or remote clinical trial site to a primary site. The primary site supports the local sites to build capacity and capability in order to help improve more equitable access and participation in clinical trials. Next slide, please, Ray. So how does the teletrial model work? I'll just do very brief. A teletrial is a group of clinical trial sites who use telecommunications to conduct clinical trials closer to where the patients live. Teletrials use telecommunications to link healthcare sites to deliver clinical trials for patients living in our RRR areas. We have one primary site and one principal investigator for the entire cluster. A cluster can be one primary site and one satellite site, or one primary site and more satellite sites. We are also hoping to look at statewide clusters for some of our more rare diseases. The satellite sites may be known up front when you're looking at a clinical trial and can be submitted as part of the ethics application, or the satellite sites or additional satellite sites may join the cluster later after the participants have been identified. So the how is teletrial a little bit different? There's a few more documents to convert or run a trial from a clinical trial to a teletrial. One of the most important is the supervision plan. This document documents and states all the logistics and operations that is going to happen between the sites and how the principal investigator provides their oversight of the satellite sites. This document is developed between the sites, the primary site and satellite site, and it also is in collaboration with the sponsor. They also have to approve how the trial is going to run as a teletrial. It is, I guess, one myth or one question we get asked all the time is, but you can't do all of the study visits, all the clinical trial visits at the satellite sites. And we know that. there are some quite complex trials. Take hematology, for example. We know that we cannot perform all of those visits, tests, investigations at our, rural and remote satellite sites. But I guess we can still, we know that, some of the visits will be performed at the primary site, but all the other, there will be many visits that can be performed at the satellite site. So we believe that minimizing the travel, we might not be able to completely eliminate it, but minimizing that travel is still beneficial for our patients. They can still partake. There might be 20 visits in a trial, 4 of them are still at the satellite, at the primary site, but those other 16 are at the satellite site, and that is access to the clinical care closer to the patient's home. That's probably all I'll say about clusters. Yes, sorry, next slide. So I guess, what are we doing? What have we done? So we have a Queensland Teletrial Coordinator Network. The QRCCC, we have funded or have funding for a 0.5 FTE Teletrial Teletrial Clinical Research Coordinator for each hospital and health service. Most of these positions have commenced, some are progressing, and I've just got a map there. I think it just helps. We are widespread. Our office and team is in the regions. Even though we are a state-wide service, we are deliberately in the regions, and our office is here in Townsville. We're hosted in Teary. So, as I said, most of our coordinators are in place, and they're supported by us to implement teletrials and clinical trials for their services. Even if it's not a teletrial, even if it's just setting up a clinical trial, because some of these health services or departments haven't participated in clinical trials before. So we're also assisting with clinical trials, because you can't have a teletrial without a clinical trial. We have regular touch points, one-on-one Teams meetings with our coordinators as frequently as they wish. And we also have a monthly network coordinator meeting where all our coordinators to get together. And I think it's been quite good, well received. They all enjoy it. We can provide updates as a team, and I think it's good support for all the coordinators in the network as well. Next slide, please, Ray. So I guess this slide's probably, this is what we've maybe achieved, and how does this support how can we provide some support to you? What might that look like? So far, the QRCCC, I suppose, includes education, training, on-site support. We currently have 2 staff members on the ground in central Queensland assisting with the rollout of new trials. We've got some funding. We have some money for funding of equipment. We have bought freezers, centrifuges, laptops, phones, stationery. So things to build that infrastructure so that you can run clinical trials. We have regulatory and startup support. We can provide as little as much support as you need. We can do all of that ethics application, all of that governance application, or we can just assist you, or you can do it all yourself. But we do have that support there. Our aim is to extend the reach of clinical trials to our patients across Queensland by building the capability and capacity of our sites. So far, our education and training has taken part in many forms, and we have educated or provided training, whether it's the funding to travel, or we've done in-house education sessions. We've provided the funding for the shippers or IATA training, GCP. We have so far, it's over 850 trained or educated staff across Queensland. We have provided 11 hospital and health service provided with the equipment and resources. Those were those like centrifuges and freezers I mentioned before, to enable these sites to conduct the clinical trials. We are constantly site and hospital and health service mapping. Myself and some of the team, we go and visit the sites to see what's available, what is the capabilities, and how can we help. We offer assistance with the National Clinical Trials Governance Framework, and last year we engaged a consumer group. So to date, we have successfully had 42 approved teletrials. We are just about ready to go on our first public and private entity collaboration, which is fantastic. We have had 148 teletrial participants, and we've also got some of our teletrial support funds that are available to those trials and sites that meet criteria. We've also got some of those funds out the door. And that again is to help with the infrastructure and sustainability of the trial. We are here on this project until October 2026. Yes, but we're hoping that our work in the hospital health services will help build the clinical trials, build the teletrials, to help build sustainable models in the health services. Next slide, please, Ray. And I guess this is just, here's our team. We have a medical director, Professor Sabasan. Our assistant director of nursing is Melanie Poxton. We have two cluster startup specialists, Liz and Jel. Middle of last year, we have two new members to our team. They are teletrial clinical research coordinators, but they are mobile, so they can help go out to the sites. That's Anne and Sam. Anne is here in Townsville. Sam is actually situated in Rockhampton. There's two nurse educators, Kim and Kim, so that's easy. And we have our wonderful administration and finance officer, Barb. And there's our email address if you would like to contact us, if you think we can help and support you in clinical trials and teletrials in any way. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, that's for you. So I'm going to stop sharing so we can have a discussion with the panel about any questions that you might have. So if you have the ability to put on your camera, please do so now. If you have a question to ask the panel, please, as we're not a large group, so I'm very happy for you to just ask it as you wish. Does anybody from the group who are listening have a question for the panel?
Hi, I do. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hey, thanks, guys. Great presentations. Jackie, I mean, just sort of reflecting on the role, it's overwhelming when you discuss it, you know, when you explain what's involved. So not only are you an experienced clinician, but you do everything else too. You're an event organizer, you're a superstar administrator, and you know, so I guess the challenge being we're growing this space and we need more of you. And so, you know, how do we do that? What are the things that we need to be thinking about to attract, train, and retain good people in the clinical research coordinator role? Because we can't do trials without you, and it's a really complex and difficult role. So, you know, we're not just going to be able to absorb people by osmosis. We're going to have to grow our own. What do we do? What do you guys think we need to be thinking about in terms of developing a sustainable CRC workforce?
Can I answer to that, Peter? Because I'm thinking that recently we bought Catri Malanon, which I think was a great step to help coordinate things, because when I mentioned earlier that, you know, the research community is very giving, I have to say that when I first came to the job, I reached out to Melanie Poxton and, you know, the girls there, and look, so often, you know, I will ask a question, probably a little less often these days, because, you know, I think I've picked their brains just about clean. But having that support and knowing that you've got somebody out there to guide you, I think that's a big thing in attracting people, because if you don't feel that you've been just thrown in at the deep end and you're going to be alone, that will attract people and keep them. As I said, when I first started, I had no idea. And I really did think I would be out of that position as soon as I possibly could, because I just was drowning. But having those experienced people out there to help and mentor people. And the other thing I think is making sure that there are positions that have a future available for them, like knowing, because if we're going to attract younger people, lots of younger people have a mortgage, they have financial commitments, and they can't go to a job that doesn't look like it's going to carry on, or that they don't have any stability or future in. They need to know that they're going to be able to move forward, that they're going to have reliable employment for a period of time.
May I? That's an
Thanks,
excellent.
Jackie.
That's a really good point, Jackie. For those of you, I mean, I noticed that Sarah Hubbard's on the line too. So Sarah Hubbard is the RGO from Torres and Cape, who would be avidly listening and trying to learn very, very much about how to set this up and what to do. So can I just double back, Jackie, just very, very quickly, you mentioned about the appointment of Katri, who indeed did set this up, but was unavailable today because she is in Rockhampton. But what we're missing, for those of us who are not in the know, is so you kind of described Katri as an umbrella role. What actually is the role of that person? Because you said that was pivotal to bring that all together, but what is that? What's her role? What does that look like?
I guess that probably Peter would be better placed to explain that. Is that okay with you, Peter?
Yeah, that's fine. And actually, look, the reason we created the Catri position was because
Is that a formal position description, the Catri position?
it was because I first started this role, and one of the first people I spoke to was leaving, and they were leaving because, exactly as Jackie had described it, they were dumped in the deep end and they were overwhelmed. They had 4 or 5 studies to try and do on their own. There was nobody to turn to. There was no team, no professional development, and it was all too hard. And so it was better for them to go back to a clinical role. And so we lost that talent from research, and that's a terrible loss, you know. So the reason the position was put in place is to create a team around for Townsville. This is our non-cancer group. We've got a lot of trials going on. There's well over 50, 60 trials outside of cancer in this health service. And so we had lots of little pockets, lots of little cottage industry pockets, and people being sort of operating quite independently and alone. And we thought, look, if we can put some supports around that group, create a team, provide them with some professional development and supports, and hopefully morphing into some specialist supports around things like ethics, governance, budgeting, contract negotiations, so that not everybody has to be an expert in everything. Because as I said, before, Jackie, that the role, as you explained it so calmly, is enormous, and it would freak a lot of people out just how vast and complex that role is. So yeah, that was the genesis of the Catri position anyway. But yeah.
Thanks. Sarah, I know you popped your camera on a minute ago. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. I mean, you have intimate knowledge of Townsville. That's a given. But what would you think you would, if you were going to set this up in Torres and Cape, if you had the ability to do that? What are some of the things that you would like to learn from these people in order to make it successful for your region?
I mean, I think, look, for Torres and Cape, we're such a group of emerging, in the research space. So one of the things that we're really lacking at the moment is more about principal investigators. So senior clinicians or mid-career clinicians who are interested in exploring research questions and developing their skills in clinical trials. And that's sort of something that I'm looking into doing at the moment, is how can I identify those people, and then how can I support them to be more engaged in clinical trials. So as much as it would be amazing to have a clinical trial coordinator who was on tap for me in Torres and Cape, That's for me like the next step. But I think that what comes first is having clinicians who are interested and willing to lead trials in the first instance. And then what comes behind them is how do we best support them and what services can we provide for them to make running a trial so much easier. And as Jackie so beautifully put, like the coordinators really are the glue that help hold trials together and get them done, for lack of a better way to put it. And I don't think we can underestimate the value of those roles, but there would be no value in me having a coordinator on site at the moment when I don't really have any investigators who want to come forward.
Sarah, can I just jump in here? With being an anaesthetic nurse many years ago, we don't have a CRC for anaesthetics. And because of that, we've got a lot of anaesthetists who are drowning. They want to do these trials and all of this, and they had no one to go to. So there was that time where they actually stepped back, so there wasn't the inference in to go forward and get a trial. So sometimes, I know it sounds a little bit putting the cart before the horse, but sometimes the cart has to be there because otherwise the horse just goes, yeah, I'm not going to do anything. So I can see where you're coming from having there, but from a clinical research coordinator's point of view, if the PIs turn around, the clinicians turn around and go, I can't deal with this. I mean, the acronyms alone that we use in research can drive anyone spare. So if you've got a nurse or a clinician that is interested in providing that CRC role and they can get in contact with us and we can turn around and go, okay, this is what you need to do if they have never done it before, perhaps. And then knowing that you have that person there, then you will feed them and they will come, sort of thing. Am I making sense?
Yes, and I've worked for directors before who've said that, if you build the infrastructure and you build the resources, then the clinicians will come forward and say, okay, yeah, well, here are my ideas, or here's what I've been sitting on for, 12 years that I'd really love. I'm really passionate about this and I really want to do it. So thank you for your feedback. I really appreciate that.
And I've noticed we're
just jumping into Kim. So, that QRCCC's role is really vital in helping to build new sites and through that teletrial model where a site can come in and not have to be solely responsible for a trial, but can be supervised. It's sort of, it's still a big stretch. There's still a lot to do, but it's that pathway to building capacity. And I think that's been a really important thing that QRCCC's brought.
Yeah, and I guess an example is with we talked to Catri's position, bringing her in and then supporting her, like with Anne's, one of our teletrial, very successful, brought Catri in October, November, December, January, 2 renal trials opened up and 40-something patients recruited. So that's, I think, a success, just showing that support. Yeah, and Jackie, your list of coordinator duties, that's yes. Yes. Yes, you put it beautifully. Yes, and it takes such a long time to become that autonomous coordinator. Sorry, my background is oncology clinical trials. So to find autonomy, it takes that 1 year of full time and 18 months to become that autonomous coordinator. So when there's that large turnaround, 3 to 6 months, it's tough. It's tough. Yeah.
But can I just interrupt there?
We're about to go over time. So yes, if you can do it, yeah, by all means, but keep it.
I was just going to say quickly, but that's where I think that the teletrials would be really amazing for support, because I understand that sometimes in those really remote areas, you get a lot of staff that aren't long-term. And I guess that's where people worry about taking on a trial, is that staff will move on. And that's where the teletrial help would be just amazing, because they can be that constant in a moving population. And they're all incredible, so why wouldn't you want them there?
But I like that. That's food for thought, and a really nice positive way to finish the webinar, I think. Thank you all, but thank you to the 4 presenters. That was really interesting. I learned a lot. Yes, agree. Thank you very much. if you want to look at yourselves again, it'll be up on the YouTube channel in about a week and a half. So feel free to do that. All right. Thank you very, very much, guys. And I'll see you all
All right.
later.
Thank you.